Hey kiddies, it's Triple Feature Tuesday once again, and this week we're going to look at 3 movies that stare into the abyss from a backseat. Baby, you can drive my car. Sorry, it's been a weird couple of weeks. I'm trying to get back into the rhythm of doing these every week, and so it's going to be weird for the foreseeable future and or until I get a new computer. But anyway, this week we're going to look at 3 movies that end on straight-on shots of our main characters in the backseat of a car while not saying anything and going through a whole spectrum of horrible emotions. So, fair warning, spoilers for all of these movies. Not sure if you can avoid them if you see like a little poster I make for all of these things, so sorry about that. But in my defense, the most recent movies probably close to 10 years old right now, so you should have seen it already, and it had Clooney, so I mean, what were you waiting on? If you didn't see it yet, you weren't gonna see it, so get over it. We're gonna go in order of increasing horror that our main characters face at the end of the story that we're watching. So our menu is going to include The Graduate, Michael Clayton, and The Long Good Friday. Mike Nichols' classic 60s film, The Graduate, stars Dustin Hoffman as the titular graduate, Ben Braddock, who has just graduated undergrad and not exactly sure what to do with the rest of his life, mainly because he's 22, and it's the 60s, so like they really had no idea what they wanted to do with the rest of their lives. So he ends up kind of looking inward and not really finding any answer and or even being equipped to answer these questions. So when Mrs. Robinson comes along and says, hey, why don't we have some extramarital sex? Well, what's he gonna do? It's Anne Bancroft. He's not gonna, I mean, you want to say no to Anne Bancroft? No, of course not. It's ridiculous. But by the end of the movie, Ben has convinced himself that he has fallen in actual love with Anne Bancroft's daughter, Catherine Ross. As you can imagine, Anne Bancroft, Mrs. Robinson, not happy with this at all, and through a series of circumstances, Catherine Ross is going to marry some dude that she knows, and Ben's going to go off to do whatever he wants, except Ben finally has something to live for and to fight for, and so he crashes their wedding and ruins it. Well, not ruins it, he gets Catherine Ross to run away with them. And they run away to the nearest bus, and they get in the back, and they're happy and excited until, you know, reality starts setting in almost immediately, or at the very least as soon as Simon and Garfunkel start singing The Sound of Silence. Because as they stare at the viewer, thinking about what they've just done, they have no answers. They don't know what lies ahead. They don't know that they made a right choice. They don't know that they made a good choice. Shouldn't they be happier? They just really are. They're driving away from the church, but they're driving, you know, head first into the yawning abyss of suburban malaise. And, you know, the world is what you make of it. You got to find a reason to keep doing things and to keep going each and every day. For some people, and Ben and Catherine, I don't know that they have. I mean, we know Ben has no idea what he wants to do. Catherine is probably less as disconnected from the world as Ben is, but she's not too far behind him. So they're driving off. They think they've won. But odds are, they're probably just going to end up making the same mistakes and falling into the same roles that their parents did. And that realization is creeping all over their faces. And that's how the movie ends, on, you know, what could be a happy note, but is probably just not a happy note. You know, suburban horror. Next up, we have Tony Gilroy's Michael Clayton, starring George Clooney as our eponymous hero, a lawyer that is really just a fixer, a guy that solves problems, you know, through legal means and through extra legal means. And throughout the movie, he's been trying to deal with the U-North case, and his law firm's attorney assigned to it, Arthur Eden's, played by an incredible Tom Wilkinson, and his bipolar disorder wreaking havoc with a gigantic class action lawsuit. And through a series of events that you really have to see to believe, because it quickly spirals from, you know, this is a serious class action case to, you know, murder, framing, attempted murder as a subterfuge, breaking and entering, all sorts of things. George Clooney, Michael Clayton, has managed to survive North and a really great Tilda Swinton, Academy Award winning Tilda Swinton, actually, for this part, attempts to murder him and protect her company, North, has managed to get the police off of his back, managed to get her, Tilda Swinton, in a position that she can't kill him and is probably going to jail for quite some time. And just kind of wanders off of the scene, gets in the nearest cab, driver asks him where he's going, and Clayton just tells him to give him $50 worth. And for about 5 straight minutes, / the beginning of the credits, everything up to, the A-list credits, as it would appear, you just see George Clooney staring at, not necessarily at the camera, but staring forward the whole time, and just kind of taking everything in. I mean, he's taking all the events. He has betrayed friends. He has betrayed his family at different points. He's tried to be a good father, but knows he's not a particularly good one. He has no money to speak of. He barely has a law career. He's probably going to be disbarred. He was almost murdered. And his future is anything but certain. All you can really say for certain is it's probably not going to be great. And for 5 minutes, he is just getting all that across without saying a damn thing. And honest to God, if Daniel Day-Lewis hadn't made There Will Be Blood that year, I think that last 5 minutes would have had George Clooney winning the Best Actor award, because it was really something. And we have just, whereas Ben Braddock and Catherine Ross were just facing suburban abyss, man, anything could happen to Michael Clayton, from like bare minimum disbarment to, I wouldn't be surprised if North and his law firm find a way to put him in jail for all of the things he's been doing. So God help Michael Clayton, because at this point, with all the bridges he's burned, no one else is going to. Finally, we have The Long Good Friday, which is one of the best 80s English gangster movies. It is so impossibly good. And it's wonderful to watch because it's sort of like a little time capsule. Because if you like Guy Ritchie, Matthew Vaughn type of gangster movies that came out like in the late 90s into the early aughts, just about every other person in those movies is in The Long Good Friday, just younger, and the odds are with a mullet. The film stars Bob Hoskins as a mob boss trying to go legit Harold Shand. I mean, mainly legit enough. He's teamed up with a wonderful partner / lover, Helen Mirren, Helen Mirren, dude. And his whole world is coming apart at the seams over Easter weekend. He's on the verge of the biggest deal of his life, an international partnership to develop the dock area of London, on the Thames. And all of his places keep blowing up. There are bombs everywhere. His consiglieres, his advisors, his right-hand men are getting murdered. And nobody can explain why, least of all Harry. And it's not until the end of the movie that he finds out that through a fairly convoluted series of events, he has drawn the ire of the IRA, the Irish Republican Army. In the late 70s, early 80s, they were really nobody you wanted to mess around with because, murders and bombings. So by the end of the film, Harry thinks he's finally gotten clear of all this and can get back to his life when he is immediately kidnapped by the IRA and being driven off at gunpoint to a fate unknown. And unlike Ben Braddock and Catherine Ross, who were facing suburban malaise, or Michael Clayton, who is facing some sort of uncertain employment future, Harry is going to die. He's a mobster in general, and these are the IRA. He is not going to come out of this alive. There's a very slim chance he could come out of this being under the complete control of the IRA, because it's either they're going to murder him and Helen Mirren, or they work for him forever. But more than likely they're going to die, and more than likely they're going to get tortured first, because that sends a bigger message. Because, yeah. So, and through the whole thing, Bob Hoskins is just staring right at the front, and you can actually see the 5 stages of grief going through. There's like the denial, the anger, the bargaining, the acceptance. He's just trying to figure out if he's got any play, and then by the end of it, he's got none. And he's kind of trying to make peace with that in the span of like 2 or 3 minutes. And it just, Bob Hoskins was just incredible. I mean, he's so, you really should see The Long Good Friday, because Bob Hoskins is so young and visceral, and he is just a force to be reckoned with, and he's like 4 foot nothing, but you know, you would never, if you see this guy coming, he will mess you up, and it's just really great. So these are 3 movies that end up with our main character staring into the abyss while being driven to an uncertain but probably horrible fate. And hopefully I'll be back onto a more regular schedule, and I'll see you guys next week.